listening to us talk and you're watching us talk. And hi, so nice to be here in the postseason with Week 18's nonsense behind us. And we've got 6 very fun NFL games that we're going to preview, talk about here coming up on the show. Because with me, as always, is the great Mr. James McCormick. Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. I would say anxiety. I would just say that, stress, maybe that's anxiety. I don't know. Yeah, the playoffs are here and it feels different. So
anxiety because of the Eagles.
Yeah, and I just, for some reason, listen to too much radio, and that's really bad for you. So
imagine being a Patriots fan right now.
Yeah, that's another. It's a different spectrum of that, but it's still anxiety. So yeah.
Yeah, it is anxiety. How long has it been since the Eagles have been as terrible as the Patriots got quickly?
True. Well, they had the kind of semi-tank season, right? But I guess that really wasn't as bad as this got.
It wasn't 3 wins, right?
Chip Kelly, I guess, got weird.
So what? 2012,
2014,
11.
Yeah.
Because
then 2015, Doug came in. So yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, we are going to preview. We are brought to you by DraftKings as always, and we thank DraftKings very much. We'll tell you a little bit more about them as we proceed. But our goal here is to talk about how we think these games might go, what we're looking for in particular, and then as a little fun bonus, we'll also give you a pick against the spread. And we'll start with Saturday's first game. The Texans apparently have this spot locked up in the schedule for the foreseeable future because I think we would probably all agree that the Texans are the team. Well, I'll ask you, Jim, do you agree that the Texans are the team among the 12, is it 12? No, it's 14.
This weekend. Well, this weekend is 12. So.
Right, but 14 team, well, the 2, you're right, because
Sure.
the 2 who are not playing this weekend are pretty good. Yeah. But of the 12 who are playing this weekend, they're pretty clearly the one that people have the most doubts about.
Yeah, I mean, you can signal, momentum, whatever you want to say, but you can say some trajectory or whatever, just quality of play, really, with other teams. Whereas this team kind of just waffled their way in. I suppose Pittsburgh would be the other example of a team.
Yeah, I was thinking. I was thinking.
Way in,
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I had that wrong, and maybe it's tied.
Those 2 teams are the ones that I would think about. But the other way, otherwise the field feels pretty frisky. Houston just seems also this game. What strikes out to me is what they're really good at. The Chargers have the tackles, right? So if they're the number 1 team in pass rush win rate, you have the Chargers on the other side. Just wait, we have a solution for that. And then the guy has khakis on all day. So,
well, maybe local area shopping mall Davis Mills will play. My feeling about the Texans is, maybe it's just time to for me to swallow some reality because, I was really, really high on the Texans. They weren't my Super Bowl pick, but I thought it was possible. And I thought Stroud would be great and was completely wrong. And just for fantasy purposes, cousin Josh was all over me for all season long. How's your Stroud now? Right. And the answer was not good. It's weird. What they have turned into this past month or so, offensively, feels different from what it was like before that. I was already out. I already lost on the Texans being a super elite offense. But man, what they turned into in this last month when they just kind of stopped being competitive against good teams feels like a whole other level of suck.
Yeah, they just became not just a rut, in terms of couldn't put the same type of games together. Those big scoring it didn't go to unstoppable. It went from couldn't even get a drive going. Couldn't stay on the field. It just became all homers, either all deep shots to Nico Collins or 1-yard runs to Mixon. It just we've already had a referendum on that team, right? Maybe it was a month ago we started talking about is the PFF Bobby thing, meaning is there an end point? Did somebody figure this offense out? I don't know. Sirianni, maybe was he ever good? No, but what I'm saying is sometimes teams get figured out. Is that what happened? I'm not good enough to evaluate this, but it just seems what happened is my question. A lot of people the awful analysis, to be honest, is I was listening to Sirius today and this is the NFL, whatever, and they were talking about how it's his banquet series. It was CJ Stroud's offseason, and I was I don't know, guys. I don't know how many, because what you saw is Instagram, that doesn't define what he was doing.
No. No, I don't think it's that. I mean, at some point you go, yeah, they lost two of the three main receivers. Joe Mixon got his ankle fallen on again.
Offensive line, isn't that the story? Sorry, but
offensive line is rough. I don't think the coaches got terrible. But what's the line of demarcation that caused this team, in my mind, especially this offense, to go from, if CJ Stroud doesn't make a super heroic play by extending a play with his legs, diving in the midair, and then throwing on the run as he's in midair, then they lose. I guess, this is the team that hung with Detroit. This is the team that hung with Green Bay. The challenge for me for this game is to not indulge all my many doubts about the Chargers and kind of want to relapse to be stubborn with your opinion. Be stubborn with your opinion on the Texans. Right. And no, I'm not. I don't think I see that. I mean, I'll grant you, all those Charger voices in my head.
Right.
They're loud. What's this team done to deserve to be a road favorite in a playoff game? I see the same personnel that poops itself every year. Yeah. And so I don't know. This is a battle between two teams I don't necessarily think are great, but I'm leaning toward the Chargers. And I think the main reason is because I think of that road Denver game of whatever that was, Thursday night game, what was that, 4 weeks ago or something? Yeah. It's the first time where they stood up and acted like grown-ups in the second half of the game where they had started badly, and I got a little bit of confidence in them.
Yeah, not to say we're the referendum team, but that was that week I think was the when is it Justin's deal kind of thing, right? And I think that was my pick of the week that week, which really backfired. But the point being, the Chargers feel like they have this identity, whether it I think it's kind of a styles make. They only really have a narrow lane, it feels like basically Justin Herbert playing really awesome, but he's pretty good. And more importantly, I think the running thing does matter. I think they were 30th in DVO rushing without Dobbins, and having him back, I just think it changes everything. And I do think you can run on this team, whereas what you'd want to run against the team that has the number one pass rush, So that's what I think Houston has.
I'll tell you what, I think more than anything in this game, I like the under.
Okay. I can see that.
I would play the under, but I guess I'm going to lay them. I mean, I'm looking in the chat and I'm seeing, Victor says, it's a tough pick, but a road favorite.
I know. And
I'm taking the Texans. Yeah, I'm taking the Texans, barf. Well, this is the game last year where, do you remember who went to Houston for this Saturday afternoon game? Do you remember which team it was? Dave, do you remember? Dave should remember because it was the Browns. It was the Joe Flacco Browns in this, and people were doubting the Texans and they're too young and yada yada, and it was a very close spread, and it felt like printing money. I was all over Houston, and I want to be the same way. I want to be stubborn with that take, and I've just decided I would be on the Chargers here, -2.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing. It's funny that your lead was kind of about trying to accept identities, and here I'm the Chargers. So,
well, I mean, I think in the end, what I've done is accept
that there are different Chargers, I guess. So,
well, at least that they've got a chance at being different than what I've seen for a month out of Houston.
True.
Sure. Okay. All right, let's do the other Saturday game, and it's the other team that maybe doesn't belong being. Imagine Cincinnati's in these playoffs and they're going to Buffalo, right? That would be extremely fun. Instead, we get, for the third time in 6 weeks or something, we get the Steelers and the Ravens, and we learned our lesson the last time these teams met and the Ravens were a big favorite. We just basically said, yeah, I'm not buying that the Steelers are somehow magic and that the sum of the parts is less than the whole and somehow they're just going to come together. And we both were like, no, they're going to get their doors blown off. And really all the Steelers have done for a month is get their doors blown off.
Yeah, not that it offers some great insights, but I just told you guys I don't have time to watch movies, but I watched 5 hours of Hard Knocks, mid-season Hard Knocks, which is so I have a problem. But the point is, half of that show is Steelers Ravens, and you get to know how intimate the matchup is. But more importantly, just the different trajectories the teams are on. Mike Tomlin is constantly screaming at people why can't we cover tight ends? More importantly, he just keeps screaming at Patrick Queen throughout practice, and then you have this other team who just seems like they're coming the completely other way. Like I feel like what we're not talking about with this Ravens offense is the defense is starting to really feel like a Ravens defense. So
Yeah.
you mentioned it last week with the way the line's playing. So we know that it's just this is a mismatch. We know it. So I don't know how much more it needs than that. So
yeah, I guess we'll say the only factor that could mess it up is Zay Flowers because
right, sure, the name. Right.
I think I sent it out on Blue Sky, maybe not Twitter, but on Blue Sky when the Zay Flowers injury happened, because it was a the Island game, the national TV game, watching the Ravens and watching Zay Flowers go down, and I'm like, the Chiefs are the new Patriots in terms of luck.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like here's the most important aerial weapon on this team. Oh, he's hurt. Yeah, it's a question. AFC Championship game, we'll see if he can play against the Chiefs. I guess that's one way you can say, okay, does Lamar Jackson struggle a little bit more in the air when he doesn't have Zay Flowers? I think it's been a pretty small sample size of that. Maybe it's true, but I don't know if it's causation. Good players playing is good, but I also don't feel like Zay Flowers has been the key to wiping the floor with the Steelers lately.
I mean, he's certainly really. I mean, he's great, right? I mean, he's a great player, and like you said, the space thing. But not that he's additive. Like he's a really important part. But maybe I'm trusting too much in the Ravens' ability to find guys, but they continue to produce. I think there's more to this, obviously, than Zay Flowers. He's amazing. I think this isn't the game that I'm making that the focus. Let's say that.
Yeah, this is another one where I go. I think I like the under more than I like the total, or okay. I mean, I like the under for the total rather than I like the spread. Because I think the Steelers might score 3 points.
I wonder when the really clamps get put on them, especially with this isn't a game where the familiarity works in their favor. Right. I don't think they have another trick is my point. Whereas the Ravens probably do because they have all these weirdo good players. So
well, I'll tell you if there's a way, if we believe that the NFL is a league of snapback, everybody decides to have one opinion and it's too much, and then it's overboard, and then the other thing happens. I guess George Pickens could have a huge game because against the Bengals, he humiliated himself in a national television game. It was horrendous. Doesn't even start to describe it. So maybe he is a potential wrecker.
He is.
He makes a bunch of big plays. He could screw this up, but I guess I'm going to say it's a lot of points to lay in a playoff game between division opponents who are playing for the third time, but minus 9.5, I would take the Ravens.
And not that teams don't know this, but if any team's equipped to really put a safety on him and just really just say and live with it, it's a team that could often plays 3 safeties. So yes, I'm going to give the points.
Did you know that Kyle Hamilton's switching to safety was a big difference for this team? It seems like something the announcers never say.
They never talk about it. They never talk about his size either, or that he went to Notre Dame. So.
Nico in the chat has just said he's so happy to be here, and also I forgot Jim's bear's name, but I'm always stoked to see him back there. And so we're not gonna tell you who his name is just yet. Everybody in the chat knows his name. You could say his name in the chat. We're not going to say it out loud yet. But we're very happy to have you, Nico, here. Let me thank DraftKings for continuing to sponsor us even into the playoffs. Without DraftKings, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We thank them very much for it. Last week, we asked you for your best bets, and the correct answer, or the one that we picked, was we believe it's Jean Lauren, although it is a gentleman, but I could be butchering the name. I apologize. And their pick was the Chargers over the Raiders last week. Turned out to be a laugher and an easy cover. Great job, Jean. And then I wanted to tell you that if you've never gotten a DraftKings account, but you thought, hey, I don't really have a dog in this hunt and I'd like to root for these playoff games, I find that just $5 makes me be able to root for a team a lot. And it's silly that it is the case. We always want you to bet in moderation. But if you do download that DraftKings app for the first time and you sign up using the code HarrisTube, all one word, you actually have a great promotion going on for the playoffs. It's a really great one. Make one $5 bet. You'll instantly get $200 in bonus bets put into your account, whether that bet hits or not. It'll be instant. So if you've never downloaded that DraftKings app, it's a great time to do it. It helps the show. They count that. They decide whether they want to sponsor us in the future. Use that code HarrisTube, all one word. And then you get $200 in bonus bets to mess around with all weekend long, which is quite fun. Thank you so much to DraftKings for that. All right, let's go on to Sunday. Mm-hmm. We've got another, I guess, blowout Although I do recall that these two teams played in this stadium during the regular season on a Monday night last year, and it didn't exactly go the way the home team wanted. It's Broncos and it's Bills, and the Bills did a very hilarious job of sabotaging the Patriots' chances to have the number 1 pick last week. That was something else. That was declining penalties. That was dirty pool that I tip my cat. I admire. But they haven't played
punter bonuses.
Yeah,
I've never heard of this.
They haven't played in a week, I guess, and they get the Bo Nix Broncos, who answered the call and crushed the backup Chiefs to make the playoffs as the 7 seed. What I remember, Jim, about last year is it was one of the few games that Russell Wilson played very well in Denver. In Buffalo,
right,
when he played for Denver. And I also remember it was one of those games where the Bills struggled near the goal line and turned it over a lot. And then Cortland Sutton made a bunch of big plays. Is there a path for something like that to happen with Bo Nix at the helm?
I suppose there's a path. I think it's fairly narrow. It would require that. I think that the turnover thing, like I think they would have to have just more shots. Like, meaning I just don't think they have as good of an offense. If you use it like a NBA terms, you're just going to have more possessions if you're not as good as offense. So you better have some path to that. Their path would kind of have to be luck the way, like, I don't think it's like by design, like meaning, of course they have Surtain. I just feel like there are just too many moving parts. But it's, again, we're not really exactly talking about who we think wins this game, right? We're trying to also like frame it in terms of its competitiveness, right? Like the paths to it. Denver, I think, would just they'd have to have what I mean is I think they'd have to kind of pitch their perfect game. I know what you're saying about last year.
Yeah.
But I've also done this before. I'm like, it's a different Bills team, but it's really all the same mechanics, right? It's all this, meaning all the same pieces,
right?
Except like there's no like fake drama thing or whatever. It's just everyone's happy. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a great point because right around that Broncos game last year is when they changed offensive coordinators because everybody was mad at everybody.
Sure. Dorsey, and then it goes to
Brady.
And then also it just became the Diggs thing devolved. It did to an extent or whatever. Right. But I suppose the idea would be that I think this team's different. I don't know, not to run with your theme, but the idea of like when do we buy into an identity or not with the Bills? My thing is that like the 8.5. I think they can obviously score their face off on this team. My thing is the question is like is the Bills defense really that good? Right. Mm-hmm. Last week is obviously not a measure. That was a bye week. Right. I mean, they were punting on field goals but I guess that's my thing is I'm confused. This game is not an easy read for me, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think the Bills probably win. I feel pretty confident that when push comes to shove, the Broncos aren't Surtain notwithstanding, he's great. Yeah. But I mean, if anything, the Bills really don't have a go-to receiver. If anything,
wait, what do you take away?
Yeah, like go ahead, take one guy away. We'll just throw away from Patrick Surtain. That's going to be the mission. Like, I don't know that I think Denver yet has the horses on defense to say, okay, Josh Allen, you can't just name your number. So I think the Bills probably win, but I think it's a rookie going into a freezing cold, nasty environment to play. And maybe it's stupid to say this, but there's a way for the Broncos to not puke themselves and to kind of be in it. And we're talking 8.5 point spread.
Yes, pretty big. Yeah.
I mean, I made it 8, so it's not like I think I'm on the Broncos, and I don't feel strongly about it. I also don't feel strongly about the total. Whereas with the first two, I was like, yeah, let's play under. I don't. This one could kind of be either. I think the Bills are going to score. It's just a question of whether the Broncos score.
Yeah, I actually had it right at 8 too. It's just, not just the crowd thing, just the idea that the Bills, when they do take off, they have they've had these lines all year. This is kind of like their line. It's 8.5. They live in this range. At the same time, I'm going to take the points. I know it's a lot. I know there's many paths to like me feeling dumb when this is 14-0, but I think there's also paths for that to close because the Bills are weird. So yeah. Between the two of them, we both think that the Ravens are going to take it to the Steelers and that the Bills maybe are going to take it to the Browns. They might. I don't feel strongly. I'm a half a point off. It's different than the two similar lines. They're so close, right? 8.5, 9.5.
They are pretty close. All right, that's the first half of the game. Should we do? How about 5 minutes of fantasy? And people can ask whatever they want. They can ask about keepers. They can ask about future guys. 5 minutes of anything.
Just no inverse like top 12 order type things. So like, yeah.
Right, fair. I don't have them. I'd love to tell you what my order is. I don't do that yet this time of year. Nico has been educated that the bear is of course Gary.
Yeah.
Taylor says, how many jelly beans do you guys actually put up every week on spreads, if you don't mind sharing?
Like I said, like not a ton. Like last week, my number one move was like I really did follow that was parlayed the Bengals and the Chargers because I thought they had a connection to each other, right? Mm-hmm. And that worked out. Long story short, I put $7 on that one, but it was a parlay. But I also bet them each individually for $5, so it all worked out because I just thought one of them would work out. Meaning, so at the worst, I would have been down 12 maybe or whatever. But I ended up being fine. So I have I now have my playoff money though. I got like $31 out of putting up that. But no, that's not always going to happen. I suggest straight bets more than my goofy parlays. But the idea is that's around my range. Like I really stay in the range that Chris is talking about.
Right. I did parlay a bunch of heavy favorites and won like four heavy favorites and won. But yeah, I'm in if in a given week it's $30. It's not much. So I love the question, and this is what I advise. I just think I'm so glad it exists in the country now. I mean, not in California, but for most people, I'm glad it exists because I think it's a thing that people should be allowed to decide whether they can deal with it or not. And I actually think a lot of the tisking that's coming, especially from the left, where I tend to reside, is somewhat misguided. Like, I actually kind of do believe in personal responsibility, and like we sell alcohol in the country, and now we're selling weed in the country, and I feel like that's not my fault. Like I want to be able to place a $5 bet. Now, if I were addicted, if I had an actual problem, if I were making $1,000 bets, I would understand why it would be a bad thing.
Absolutely. And but I've had a friend who's gone through that, and there's solutions for that. You have to work on that too. Just like I'll be honest with alcohol. Like it's not my thing. It can't happen. Yeah. So
Cisco asked a question, and this is for me because he knows that I said this on the podcast. Do I still have Joe Mixon above Josh Jacobs for next season? The short answer is probably no, and I have a feeling that on the podcast with Jake Seeley tomorrow, this might come up a little bit because I already sent the topics to Jake, and we're going to talk about Mixon. When I made that pronouncement that Mixon was a first rounder and Jacobs might be later in the first round, that was like at the peak of Joe Mixon, and he got hurt again. My answer is it's closer now for me. I don't know that I have a definitive read on it. I'd like to believe that most of what happened to Mixon here at the end of the season is because of the second hip drop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know for sure. And it has gotten worse, no question about it. Victor says, Tyjae Spears, does he ever get the chance to be anything more than a change of pace back, do you think?
I mean, we're about to find out, right? They're going to have a new decision maker there, and I don't think
Pollard will still be there.
Right. No, Pollard will still be there, but I'm just saying I don't know what this new decision maker's whole hierarchy plan is. But yeah, no, Pollard's there. It's not going to be. It doesn't feel like it's going to be this contract, apparently, because there's the overlap with Pollard isn't great. So it doesn't feel awesome, but I think he's a good player.
Yeah, he's I like a lot of the things I liked about Chase Brown. I also said about Tyjae Spears. He's just smaller.
Right. Okay.
And it's just hard.
Complimentary. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard when you're that size. Is there a chance that Xavier Worthy can jump into the Ladd McConkey, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas tier for next season?
I don't know about that tier. I mean, I would separate that a little bit too. Like I love Ladd McConkey, but those other two particularly, I think, are going to creep into the high, the really high tier of guys. I would still say the separation. I don't know. That's tough for me to say that is really in the works.
Yeah, I haven't been impressed with what I've seen from Xavier Worthy, really. At least
specialist, I guess, right? Again.
Yeah, he's been a specialist. It's exactly right. And I don't want to say that because you see that 1 year out of a guy, that's all he can ever be. But it's hard to assume that he can be some outside, downfield, route running, traditional kind of receiver until you see it. And he scored some touchdowns and stuff, but it's all sweeps and handoffs and wide receiver screens.
Get to the edge.
Yeah, get to the edge. So yeah, I'm not there yet on him. I'm not ruling it out, but it isn't how I would rank him going forward right now. All right, let's get to the second half here of our games for the wild card weekend, and let's get to the main event. I couldn't bring on Gary, for heaven's sake.
All right, so he's asking me just a little build up. Yo, Gary, you ready? Yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah,
He's where the people on the podcast don't know, but Gary's wearing an old-fashioned Eagles starter jacket.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Listen, don't ask me where I got this jacket. It's from a dude's truck. He's a good guy. We all have trucks. You know what I mean? Yeah, here we go. Number one, go Birds. Yeah, listen, it's I mean, a lot of anxiety. You know what I mean? I've been on some CBDs. You know what I mean? Just chilling out. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I'm ready. I got my CDL, and I'm ready to go. Let's go. Here's the big thing: Jordan Love. You know what I mean? He's too tall, and I don't know. Matt LaFleur it's too French for me. You know what I mean? Go Birds. Go Birds.
Gare Bear has weighed in. We know we're getting a biased pick out of Gare Bear, but we'll get real thoughts on the game from Jim. It's funny because I think this is maybe the one of this weekend where the most money has come in, and also the most kind of contrary opinion is coming in. A lot of people think, what have the Packers done? A lot of people think the Packers are a top 5 team. This line, I believe, opened at Eagles -3.5. Mm-hmm. But on Monday, within less than 24 hours of the open, I saw it on DraftKings at -5.5.
Yeah, and that's settled.
And now it's settled down, at least as of our recording this, at -4.5. And it's very clear that line involves Jalen Hurts playing. As of our recording this, he's practiced. So yeah, we're assuming he's going to play. I remember week 1 in Brazil on a terrible field with everybody falling down. And I remember thinking at the time that even though the Eagles won that game, that there was some bad officiating and actually the Packers were better. But it's a long time since then. And I have to admit, the thing that stands out about these teams most of all to me is the Philly defense.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. That does feel like so long ago. Like in terms of, the Packers, their identity hasn't changed as much since then. I mean, like, we also had to learn, I guess, more about them being the second, a new back in the second year really for this quarterback, but blah, blah, blah. Right. The real point is you're right. The evolution is the defense. The thing is that the Packers, it's interesting. The Packers have this idea where it's like, yes, Watson is hurt, but it's like pick your poison with all these, not that they're all interchangeable, really kind of dangerous receivers, right? Like, to some extent, but like you mentioned with the Bills, it's a much better version than that. But the idea that it's hard to isolate which one do I really want to take out. It would be Reed, but they have other things to do. I guess my counter would be that the Eagles strangely now have this depth at DB that not a lot of systems have. And the Fangio-LaFleur matchup is really super interesting. So not because they just have interesting, like, they sound like chefs, but like it's
and one
good.
of them looks like it.
Fangio's and LaFleur's are having a war. It sounds like two Providence Italian restaurants. So like, yeah, or that's French.
French. I like the way. I mean, if I were LaFleur, the way I would be attacking would not be downfield. I mean, you know what Fangio's going to do? He's going to put the umbrella over the field. He's going to say, you're allowed the middle of the field, but not deep. You're allowed the wings, and we're going to go tackle you. And I think there are, Jaden Reed is a good weapon in the flat. Jacobs, if he can get the corner, Josh Jacobs is a good weapon in the flat. And running too, running to the corner if he gets there. Like, there are ways for Green Bay to take the older fashioned, don't really blitz, play back. Their way to take it on. The problem is that without blitzing or with playing back, that front, the whole key to this thing is the front. I know you said the secondary is big, and it is big.
No,
but the front is absolutely murdering people.
They're crazy. I mean, like, there's guys that, like, not that it's just a local thing, but like Milton Williams, for example, right? He's like really the second best defensive tackle on the team. But like, watch, I'm not joking. He's going to get more than $12 million like per year on the market this year. It's going to be over $10 million a year. And you're gonna be like, where did this come from? It's because, like, the guy constantly wins his reps. They're just invading the backfield. I mean, look, not that it always means something, but Jalen Carter is an actual All-Pro. Like, he deserved that All-Pro. I suppose the real thing would be, it has to be, this is all like, they're going to try to run. They're going to try to shorten the game. But the main thing would be, if they get in those weird third and longs, that's where this line, because they don't blitz. But they really do change how they rush a lot. Like, meaning, if you let Jalen Carter just say, go get him, I think they're in trouble. So I think Josh Jacobs needs to win early downs. So, and aren't these the two run heaviest teams in the league? Like, in a lot of ways on early downs. So
I mean, can you imagine how heartbreaking it is for me to watch this game? Jacobs and Barkley, my two guys. This is it. This is my two guys.
And Jonathan Stewart's like nodding on the sideline, like, I see you guys.
Right, yeah, Jonathan Stewart's over there too. Stew beef. I can't play the Robot Talia sound effect, but I would if I could. I'm sort of with you on how this goes. Like, nobody has really run on Philly lately, and I don't think Green Bay will be able to. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen the Eagles make a lot of weird choices, and they think we're going to run, so we're going to throw the first 13 times and suddenly they find themselves in a hole because Jalen Hurts makes a mistake. Like, it could happen.
Sure.
The Packers are a really good team, but I just don't know, man. I think the Eagles are too good.
I think the Eagles are too good, and I think it's one of those things where their strengths line up really. Like, I just don't know the huge advantage. I mean, Love. It comes down to, like, Love could throw a really great game and just beat them up. I don't know. I'm on the idea that long third downs are going to happen and that it's going to be an Eagles game. Like, obviously an Eagles game, but go Birds.
Line is 4.5. I don't think that's any kind of outrageous line because I think Green Bay is good. And like, it's a hard, but like when it was 3.5, I was like, all right, I think I know what to do. When it was 5.5, I was like, oh, I don't think I know what to do.
That's where I had it. I had it in the five weird zone where they just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. So at 4.5, we're going to both be on the Eagles. We're 4 for 4 sharing a brain here so far. Commanders are making a fun appearance in the playoffs after, let's face it, it was not a fait accompli in any way, shape, or form when, at the ends of a few of these games in December, Jaden Daniels kind of took things into his hands. And that's certainly, if you're a Buccaneers fan, has to be in your mind. We are a better team than this team. We have a lot more experience. We probably have a coaching advantage, at least coordinators. I don't know about the head coach. Right. There's a lot of things I can point to with Tampa and say, yeah, I just think that team having a lot of core guys who've quite literally won a championship and or been in the playoffs versus this Commanders team that's new.
Just got here.
The worry that you have is that this dude is a dude and he could wreck it. Yeah,
and I guess not that it's like not the RG3 thing, but yeah, it's this idea that's a comet, like meaning that that you haven't seen it, and how much can you prepare for it? Or it's Lamar, really. It's this player who, how much can you prepare for it? Really, that's the best way to say it. Is that you're in the film room, and when they're really honest with each other, they're like, ugh, like there's gonna be like what do you do here, coach? Because it's one of those things we've talked about before. It's like, when Jason Tatum wants to shoot a 35-foot step back three, it's kind of just like, well, guys, you can't stop some of this stuff. Yeah. And I suppose that's the thing. They have some unstoppable elements that I just, that clearly are a factor.
I mean, maybe it's the only one unstoppable element, but it's so unstoppable, and he's so immediately so deadly. Here's why I like Tampa in this game, because I do think there's a little bit. I mean, I know what Todd Bowles is going to do.
Yeah.
We say the Eagles aren't going to blitz. Guess what?
He is. Yeah. And he's not going to blitz the way like Flores does, where I'm looking for where it's going to come from. He's literally just going to send his linebackers at your face. Like,
yeah. And I don't, it's really bold of me to sit here and go, Jaden Daniels can't handle that. Like, I don't know. Maybe he can, but he's such a kid. And I just feel like there have been times where it's felt like pressure has gotten in his head a little bit and he's run around a little too much and maybe not made the best throw. I also think Tampa's secondary, it sounds like, has a chance to get healthier because I think Antoine Winfield, is going to play.
He is.
And then Jamel Dean has a chance.
Right. And that's the thing. They're like, that's their whole identity. Yeah.
That means, that's a great point that I have a tendency to forget when I've been kind of picking against Tampa or disrespecting Tampa's defense or, saying Todd Bowles is bad. Like, it kind of matters that you're missing your best safety and your best corner for most of the season.
They built a very top-heavy system. It's kind of like, it's not crazy to say. It's kind of like it's the post-Tom. It's kind of Rams-like, meaning it's in the kind of the wake of the Tom Brady thing. They had to make those decisions. They have some stars and scrubs build. Either way, I'm also with you. I hate to say that we continue to do this. My thing would be Tampa is that Washington's way to win recently or throughout the season has been like, ask him to do something incredible at the end, and he does. It's just that like he's also had like 2 and 3 moments against really weird bad teams where like the Giants are like, here's another chance. I just don't think you're gonna get that many chances to really like. It just seems like they've had this narrow, fun path, but what would you say, the volatility, the variance, it's going to get to them at some point. So
yeah. I'm saying Tim in the chat says Quinn is the wild card.
Okay.
That I think that's a positive, not pejorative. That
okay.
Dan Quinn will make Baker Mayfield's life hell, and that we'll get bad Baker, which we got for a half, probably 2.5 quarters, 3 quarters last week, where it felt like they were going to punt away this entire playoff run, and then finally you got good Baker towards the end. I could see it, Tim. I get it. I mean, I think of Dan Quinn as let me when you think of Dan Quinn as a head coach, what do you think of him?
Man, he's like Todd Bowles. like there's a lot of like they're just really good coordinators who I think are in these positions where I know he went to that Super Bowl, but it just feels like he's like my dad used to call them quadruple A players, like baseball players that are in between the levels. He feels like that kind of coach. He's like a Fangio, like a coordinator plus, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, like I think back on that Falcons team, and I go, well, that was kind of the offense, wasn't it? It was kind of Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. I don't personally think that Dan Quinn would be a reason that I would back a team, but I could be absolutely wrong about that. And we will see. Maybe Tim will be right about that. All right. And then we go to Monday night here in Los Angeles, where I think the smoke will have cleared. I hope everybody in LA is doing okay. I'm doing okay. But I live on a yacht, so how could I be doing bad? The Vikings are coming here to the Rams, and you had a much better feel on the NFC North Clash of the Titans last week than I did. You were all over the Lions, and I thought that it would be a very close game. And could I, Jim, potentially defend myself by saying it should have been a very close game? The Vikings had the ball in the red zone 100,000 times and couldn't punch it in. Sure, I could make that excuse, except for the reason they didn't punch it in was Sam Darnold. Yeah. And the reason you were skeptical of the Vikings is Sam Darnold. And now the Vikings are actually a small favorite on the road in Los Angeles, with Sam Darnold making his first playoff appearance. And my question for you is did this shake your confidence in the Vikings to the point of no return last week?
I wouldn't say no return, but just interesting, like full circle, that we opened the show discussing like who are these people, like the Denny Green, they are who they thought they were kind of thing. Meaning, like, is Sam Darnold just who we thought he was sometimes? He's not. He's better than that. It's okay to not be so, I guess like extreme or all or nothing in this sense, right? Like he has been a lot better this year, but that sure looked like some bad Sam Darnold moments. But you said it last week too, though. To be honest, you weren't all in on him. You mentioned like talking with Pat Daugherty that you still can see the moments. Like you'd be like, oh yeah. But he's had so many overwhelmingly big moments. Like he's the definition of like, what do you call it? Like the big throw, right? He can make those special throws, and but more fear's been added. I felt juggernauty last year. I made that word up, but like it felt that way.
Juggernauty. My feeling about Darnold was I knew we were in for a pants crapping before the score got anything close to out of control, because even in that Detroit game last week, a couple of his throws that were completed were too high. Yeah. Like Jefferson went up for one and made a great catch, and then Jefferson had the one in the back of the end zone really early that, okay, could he catch it? Sure, but could Sam Darnold throw it to his torso, instead of
like 4 feet? Hawkinson's like 11 feet tall. So it's like, yeah.
So in some ways, and perversely, I believe in the rest of the Vikings team so much, and I believe in Kevin O'Connell so much that, like, perversely, I'll ask it as a question. Could it be better for the Vikings that they got this out of Darnold, and it wasn't all just easy, and the winning streak didn't just continue, and they kind of take a step back now and go, okay, that's in the range of outcomes. Now let's deal with it and accept that he's got to play better, but he doesn't have to be like MVP quality for us to win.
Yeah, I think there's a crescendo feeling to that season, right? Like there was a build up, like he was getting screamed at, like in a drum recital. Like there was just like too much going. There was just too much pressure. It felt like.
I understood that reference.
Yeah, it just felt like too much pressure to be perfect. Not to be perfect, but like it literally just was a big air guitar Sam Darnold week because some people are right. Like they didn't win the division, but the week before they did like that bath and everything, and I was like, guys, like you still have a game to play. But I guess the point would be that like it's again, there's gradients. Like he is gonna scare me, but I love the way that Brian Flores, like we talked about, knowing what Todd Bowles will do. Not that we do, but like that. I love how hard it is to guess what Todd Bowles is going to do, and that's like the biggest factors. How are the Rams, and I don't know if there's a better matchup this week coaching wise than McVay and Flores.
Yeah, I mean, Tim in the chat said, hasn't Stafford been the same player as Darnold this year? No, they haven't asked Stafford to do nearly as much as Darnold has had to do. And you know, that may be because they just haven't needed to, and Kyren Williams is good, but like, do we not remember the Rams in the first half of this season? They were utter garbage.
They were.
And what turned their season around was a Thursday night in Los Angeles against Minnesota. What you and I both thought the Vikings would kill them. I think it was one of my best bets that week. Yeah. Wrong. The Rams won the game outright.
But that's an identity thing too, right? Puka. Someone mentioned the potential about talking about first round picks next year. Like he might be one of them. Just the idea that we're talking about a very high leverage, important player, that he changed their style. He changed how easy it was to do those crazy Puka plays. That's like an identity itself.
It is. So. It's fair. I mean, I'm not telling you I think the Rams offense is bad. I'm telling you, yeah. I think that I'm not letting maybe a total sucker bet. I'm not letting the Darnold performance this past week. He hasn't been that bad all year. And maybe it's going to turn out that anytime it's a truly big game, but wasn't the Packer game 2 weeks ago? Wasn't that a big game?
Yeah.
Didn't he play great in that one?
Like he's been legitimately really good. Like he's actually made a lot of throws. I don't want to reduce it just to like he is who he is, because he's not that. I actually think there has been improvement. More importantly, I think O'Connell and the way he has this team going, they're just better. They just feel like a better team. I mean, you were legitimately talking about them as like a top, that's what they are really. I think that's just top loaded. It's just, I think we saw basically NFC championship caliber teams last week. It just happened to be really early.
Yeah, I mean, in Darnold,
he had a really bad NFC Championship game. Thankfully, it wasn't an NFC Championship game. Right. But you're right. The get out of your system thing, I've seen it with Hurts before, and I've hoped it's worked. It happened actually that Hurts year when they went in that run. So we'll see. I mean,
Josh says in the chat, I'll bet it. I'll live bet it. Let me see if Darnold airs his first throw. That's kind of a great point. That's.
I want to have my bet it if Darnold gets a haircut. So just want to throw that out there.
Binker says, Lions generate a lot of pressure on Darnold, definitely near the worst I've seen him pressured this season. I don't think excuses all the mistake, but it's a factor. I think I didn't think there was that much pressure on him at the beginning of the game. I thought I
think he held longer, but yeah.
The possessions in the red zone, it felt like he had enough time. He didn't find guys when he made throws. They were too high. It's all related, obviously. And then you're right. The game absolutely got away from him. He was way, way deep inside his own head. He was seeing ghosts, you might say. I'm going to be on Minnesota. I said it at 2, and right as we're recording this right now, it's 1.5. So I'm not telling you I think it's outrageous, but I think the Rams are good, and I know what the Rams kind of want to be, what the Packers want to be in this game. I think they're just going to try to run.
Yeah.
And they might have some success, but I trust. We haven't talked about Minnesota's defense at all, and I trust that defensive front. They did a great job against the Lions for 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, look, my question is a Chris question: is what would the look headline be if Minnesota had won last week? I'm kidding, because that doesn't work that way. No, but
Detroit would be in it. Detroit.
My look headline was actually, meaning my look headline. My predictive line was 3. So I just think Minnesota has a really good 53-man roster, and they can afford some Sam Darnold craziness. I think I do. I don't think this is the Lions.
All right. So now in the chat, tell us your favorite wager of the weekend down in the comments of the YouTube channel after the fact. Tell us your favorite wager of the weekend. And if you're listening to the podcast, you can just yell it out your car window. Yell it really loud, and I'm sure I'll hear it. And then we will shout out somebody next week. But I'm not going to make you do 2 best bets here, Jim. Mm-hmm. Just give me 1.
I'm going to go with Sorry, Gare. The Ravens. I just think so.
I think I'm going with the Buccaneers.
Okay.
I think it's not the right matchup for Jaden Daniels to make his first playoff appearance, but I gotta say, I think he's so fun and so good, and I wouldn't be like totally floored if he rises to the occasion and does it and figures it out and just like wrecks the game, and that would be awesome, and I would be cheering for it. So I'm not like mad at it or anything, but I think generally the way this stuff works is you get an experienced blitzing defense. The rookie quarterback usually doesn't hang, so I'll say Buccaneers. Folks in the chatter are giving their best playoff bets right now. What do you think? If you're watching the video after the fact, we'd love to know, and we will shout out somebody next week. Fun to talk about these games. This is a great weekend of football, and we will talk about the results on this show next week. Let's thank DraftKings for continuing to sponsor us. If you want to help the show out and make a few bets, download the DraftKings app, sign up using the code HarrisTube, all one word. Make one $5 bet. You'll instantly get $200 in bonus bets put into your account. Let me thank everybody who is here live. Thank you so much for showing up. We love you, and it was so fun to see you. And Dry Erase Girl was here, and lots of other luminaries from the podcast, and we appreciate you very much. Thanks to everybody watching on YouTube. Thanks to everybody listening on the podcast, and thanks to Dave Pyper for being an awesome producer, and for Jim McCormick. You're great, bye. Jim, and also Gary. If you want to just say goodbye with Gary.
Yeah, this is not the last time you're gonna see me. You know what I mean? Serious. You know what I mean? I don't disappear. I'm here. Go Birds.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.